Hi, this is Cheryl back with you from Farmhouse Frugally. Today I'm doing a collab which I'll tell you about in a few minutes. If you are new to my channel, you will see crafts, furniture flips, amazing dump hauls, and a lot of trash to treasures from those hauls. And today I have 4 thrift flips or trash to treasure items for you. Number 1 is this very pretty metal filigree frame that I got this week at the dump on the good table. But you can find these at a thrift store or anything like this. You could do this same idea and any number of frames. Since the mat was a little dingy and someone had also put their name on it, I decided to just very sparingly paint over that with my linen white chalked paint. If you are careful and don't put too much paint, it won't bubble and you'll be able to just let that dry. Chalk paint works really awesome for this, and it also helps it to match the rest of the item. So once I had a very light coat on that, then I went ahead and pulled out the frame after washing that. Again, it was a little dingy on the interior where it was a little bit of an antique-y cream, but also the metal was a little worse for wear. So I decided to go ahead and also used same linen white chalked paint on the frame itself. And then later on we'll go back and do a little bit of a wet distressing so some of this pretty brass color can show through, because I do like it, but I didn't like that dinginess of it. So once I set those two aside, I decided that for the purposes of this project, I would also have to go ahead and paint the backing just to lighten it up. I don't need full coverage. I just basically want that cardboard color to be much lighter so that when I put the picture that I'm going to be using on this, it does not look dingy. Now, I found this beautiful free watercolor online. I will put it in the description box if you are interested in this website. And I printed it on rice paper to the size that I wanted. So I just go ahead and I measure my opening 4x6 or whatever it is. And when I copy the image into my Word document, I use the ruler that comes with Word and just kind of get that to be exactly the size that I want, then cut the rice paper to fit, and then just put some tape here and there to hold it in, and then put that all back together in the frame after I wet distress with, you can use a diaper wipe, I just used a wet paper towel here, especially on the corners because I like the detail, and then here and there on the filigree to have some of that pop off, and then a couple on the edges here and there. So I really think that that already adds just exactly the look that I was going for, and making this, instead of an old frame as in the 70s, which is where it probably comes from, to make it look more like an updated frame. And once I put that all back together, I love the way that goldish bronze is picked up in the watercolor. I think that this came out really lovely. And this is probably $1 at any given yard sale or thrift store. And everything else was free. In my case, the frame itself was also free on the good table at the dump. I love it on the barn door as well. So that takes me on to my item number 2. And this was also sitting on the good table at the dump, but you can see these at any Goodwill for a couple of bucks. This had a huge crack in it and some crazing on the interior. As cute as it is, if you do that cottage core, it also was like bake oven. It's no brand name that's, valuable. So if you like cottage core, you would keep that, obviously. My home is much more neutral, and I was just looking for something that would go with a lot of different seasons, keeping it real neutral. But I could also, and I may later on, use an IOD transfer and dress that up maybe with the sunflowers for the fall, or do something with it to give it a little bit more color. But for now, I actually really did want this in neutral. But I know for the purposes of this flip, it is a tad boring. There's nothing much to this. Now, I am using a latex paint here. And I like to use a latex when I am painting any kind of a shiny surface, a glass or pottery like this. First of all, it only takes one coat. And second of all, it sticks very well and doesn't tend to chip off like a chalk paint. It doesn't need to be waxed or sprayed as the chalk paint does. As much as I love chalk paint, I prefer that for this surface. And here it is, just plain and simple. And then I went ahead and added greens to it, which is the look that I was going for, to just dress that up. I'd like to thank Tammy from the Rusted Willow, as well as Elizabeth from the Southern G. Moore Gals. They have a special host this week, and they are hosting this challenge, so make sure you check out the description box for all the other crafters that will be participating in this challenge. Now that takes me on to item number 3, which is literally trash to treasure. This mango jar is a great shape. I don't see this shape very often. But maybe in a pickle jar, or you might have something like this hanging around. I got this at Sam's or BJ's. And here I am taking that same latex paint that I had used initially, and I am giving this one good coat just to cover over the glass so that the paint will stick nicely to it. And this is a muslin wrap, I believe is the color of this color, which I just love. It's the color in my living room. And I'm going to go ahead and just coat the lid as well. Then I asked my husband to take a chair spindle and bring it outside and cut it down for me so that I would have that, and then attach it directly just with a screw to the center of the lid. And then once that one coat was dry, I did add some baking soda. Now, I have heard that you can use baking powder. I have not found that to be true. The baking powder tends to bubble up for me, and it is much thicker. I don't know, it just does not act the same as baking soda. But let me know if you are able to use baking powder and what it is that I'm doing wrong. Now, in this particular case, a lot of times you'll pounce it and make it look like cement. I don't want that. Here, I want to actually kind of slap it on and give it a rough texture like a pumpkin here, so that I can kind of mimic some of those growing lines. And then once this is completely dry, while I'm waiting, I just took out a couple of plastic apples that my sister-in-law had given me to go ahead and add that paint as well. If you want that to look like cement, you should add some gray, and then you can white wax that on top. I just wanted these to look neutral. Now, once I am finished there, I go back to my pumpkin and take out my antiquing wax. And now I am just going to kind of liberally use the antiquing wax on the pumpkin to once again kind of bring out some of those lines. I am using more of a dry brush here, just kind of putting a little bit on my brush, wiping it off on the newspaper, and then just sort of getting some of those lines there. Now I am going to go over those with a couple of other colors, so they may look a little dark at this moment, but just to kind of, since the jug is kind of just, obviously very circular in shape. Once I get that on there, then I used a gray chalk paint that I had in my stash, and then just kind of added a little bit of shadowing and went over some of that antiquing wax. And then again, I went back to the original antique creamy color that I had originally used, so just giving that a little bit more dimension. If you check out my videos from last fall, you'll see a number of adorable little shaped pumpkins out of other smaller glass jars around the house, relish jars and what have you. And then I went to the Graphics Fairy, and when I'm using rice paper, I like to use it all, so I went ahead and put a whole bunch of just graphics on a sheet, printed it, and then cut out the one I wanted for today. And here I'm just Mod Podging that onto a piece of cardstock. Like to have that rice paper feel and look. It looks more vintage, but also because I don't know what I'm going to do with those other items that I printed. I may or may not have wanted them on cardstock. So one hole punch that, and then I'm go ahead and take some antiquing wax and go around the edges to make that look more vintage, more antique-y across the tag. And then I went ahead and just added some jute twine to the top of that to make that little tag hangable, and then dressed that pumpkin with that, as well as I had a strip of drop cloth, some lace from the dollar store, and some jute twine. Decorated that with a little leaf that I had left over in my stash, and that's all there is to it. There's so many things you can do with these little pumpkins, but I thought that came out adorable, and that's much larger than I usually do. That held a lot of mangoes. So that, I think, is just really sweet, and I love it with the sunflower picture that I made from the IOD transfers a couple of months ago. And that's what made me think I might like to put some sunflowers on that other dish, but we'll see what I do with that. But here we have a bit of a fall vignette with these items, and you'll have to let me know what you think of those. Now that does take me on to my final item, number 4, which is a book, and you can get a book anywhere, and you've seen a lot of these done, but I had a little bit of a different twist on mine this week. So I started, I got this for 50 cents, I think, at the Goodwill, this book, and I like the fact that it was two-tone, but I just started taking my black chalked paint and going over the black that was on there to eliminate, obviously, the title of the book, and to go ahead and get that matte chalk paint look. Now I have this tissue paper that is like musical notes, and I just rip off a piece, and I like the ripped edges to show. You can cut it if you want it to be precise, but I just wanted to go ahead and Mod Podge some of this to the top of the book. This way the book is still usable if somebody actually wanted to read the book. I'm not gluing the pages or anything. I'm just going to go ahead and just decorate the top of this. And I have done a number of different book sets. Again, check out my videos. I have over 200 videos. And once I had that fully Mod Podged on, I did go over the top of that and let that dry. Now, I thought that I was filming when I pulled out my new bird stamp that you saw me use last week, where I showed you 4 or 5 different ways to use this stamp, and this was just one more idea, one more way that I could use this adorable stamp. It is just so sweet, but I did not hit play. So I used Stays on Ink. I used that little bird stamp that I got on Amazon, and I went ahead and stamped the top of the book right on top of the music. And then I just took that same chalked paint and went around the edges with a dry brush, and just kind of here and there over the top of that to make that look a little bit more antiqued. Now, I had this feather. That was my inspiration. In my yard, I have a lot of turkeys, and they are often losing their feathers, so I thought that would be adorable to just go ahead and glue right on the front with that bird theme. And again, I took some scrap ribbon, drop cloth, jute twine, just tied it in a knot, and just go ahead and glue the knot right onto the feather. And then I could add a hang tag here. I could add a little, jewelry, anything that you want here, but I just left it as it is. And I think that it's quite cute. Doesn't really destroy the book, but dresses it up. And it's so simple to do for, 50 cents. You can get a book anywhere. So I thought that these would be inexpensive ways that you could recreate some of these items. Please do not forget to check out the playlist, The Other Creators. I would love it if you would like and share this with a friend. And please subscribe so you can catch the other things that I do coming up. And I thank you for your support. And I will see you in the next one. Take care. Thanks for stopping by.